Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one person or one starfish at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out about what we do. I'm really excited for our guest today. This is someone I actually know and have been able to work with directly. Gene Early, is an NLP coach out of Virginia. Incredible human, incredible family guy. Has been doing this for 56 years. And he's only like 50 years old. It's amazing. And since 1978, this is so cool. He actually brought the NLP coaching to Europe. He can explain that a little bit more. And you know, life changed at a very early age. His dad passed away, and so we'll definitely touch on some of that and how much that impacted his life and where he's at today. And he just wants to help people and make a massive change. So guys, if you haven't followed him, I'll have all the stuff, links in the show notes and stuff like that. There's some cool events that I know he has in Europe, but they're also like virtual. So check out some of the stuff that Gene has going on. I know he's helped me immensely with my business. So welcome to the show, Gene.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. This is great. Looking
Awesome.
forward to it.
Yeah, let's dive into things. So, your dad passed away. That's going back early. We'll start with that. Your dad passed away when you were 12, and that was a huge impact on you. You said. So tell us a little bit about what that was like, and you know what the lessons you took out of it, I guess.
Well, I would say there are two things that immediately come to mind when you say that. One is just the immediate impact of it was I literally felt like I kind of got sucked into a black hole. It was like this kind of gravitational pull when my mom came in my bedroom and sat down on the bed with me and just said, you know, Dad's gone. And I knew he was in the hospital. So it wasn't like it, in one sense, it was not a shock. In another sense, it absolutely was.
Right.
And so that gravitational pull was without question the defining moment of that period of my life, and really defined my life for many years until I felt like I got out of it. And there was a moment in time where I actually did. I literally felt I'm now out of the black hole and I can move on to other things. But the other thing that came to mind was just the gratitude of God's goodness to be able to kind of draw on the trauma. Which is a strange thing to say in some way, but I really do believe that people who experience trauma like that and are able to come through it are so much stronger, so much more capacitated to engage the world. And for me, I would say that it is the source of my compassion and the reflections and the work that I've done to overcome that pain and the amazing, just totally amazing kind of journey on that. I would say another thing comes to mind is that it was the basis, that period, that time was the basis of an unconscious commitment to become whole. And that's been thematic through my entire journey since then. And it actually shaped the work I do. I mean, I've been working as a consultant, organizational consultant, and one of the goals is to bring wholeness to organizations. It's true in my marriage. It's true in my relationships. It's like everything really orients around that drive to be whole, and realizing that wholeness continues to expand. So it's like I feel like that there have been very definitive moments where, okay, now I'm whole. And then I realized there's more. It's like,
but wait, there's more.
Yeah, there's more. There's more in terms of being whole. It's like it simply expands. One of those experiences was I committed and have committed for all these years since I was 12 to personal growth and development. I didn't always call it that, but that's really what it was about. And I had a 8-year period where I worked with this wonderful counselor doing emotional freedom technique called tapping, and I had a profound vision during one of our sessions where I actually I feel like that I was transported into the spirit and met my dad in the hospital room where I last saw him. And our communication was not verbal. It was totally this kind of, we just knew that we knew we were communicating with each other. And he said to me, this is what I wasn't able to do, but I'm able to do now. And he handed me a scroll and he said, this is the scroll of manhood. And this was what I was meant to give you, but I didn't have the time or space or whatever. And I felt like it was like one of those kind of incredible moments where the transition from one state to another state happened. It was like you're a son and now you're a man. I was like, okay. And that's kind of a totally intangible thing, but it's profound. So anyway, I have a number of experiences like that, but that's a really significant one.
How did your mom handle it when that happened? I mean, you're 12, you're still kind of on the borderline of kid and adulthood, I guess, in a weird way.
Yeah.
And did you have siblings?
Yeah, I have an older sister, younger sister. Yeah.
Okay. So now your mom's raising you guys alone, three. Yeah, I don't know, maybe you guys were good kids. If you were like me, it was like terror. But anyway, raising three kiddos. And, how does she handle it? And how do you think that influenced you as you grew up?
There were a couple of things. One is that our extended family was incredibly supportive. We lived in Memphis, and my grandmother, her family was she was one of 8 children, I think, and so all of those with their parents, I'm cousins and I don't know what you call them, great aunts and uncles and stuff like that. All of that's there, and all of them were incredibly supportive. Particularly my grandparents and also my dad's parents were incredibly supportive. So she was supported in that regard. My dad had also been very thoughtful financially so that the house was paid off and she did not have to go back to work. And I would say that there are 2 things. One was that she had rock solid faith. She just, she had been through the war. She had just kind of, she was a bit stoic, I would say. And so she not very emotional in those kinds of things. She just, this is what's happened. I've got to deal with it and I'm going to deal with it. That's one side of it. The other side of it was that we did not, as a nuclear family, we did not speak about it for 30 years, which was, it was one of
That's a stoic side of like, don't talk
about
it.
Stoic side. It was one of my pervasive challenges to her. Not this, that wasn't the content of speaking about it. It was, come on, we've got to communicate. And she was totally responsive, but unable to recognize the need that I had in that regard. So, I mean, once she got past that, which was many, many, many years later, it was really just so wonderful. She died when she was 95. The last 7 years of her life, she kind of dropped all those defenses and she saw me for who I was. And that was a singular goal for all those years. And I really put a lot of effort into it. And, she was gracious in saying, I'm willing to listen, but she just didn't seem to understand. And I think that comes out of that stoicism and that kind of living through the World War II and, personality and all the things. But, once she dropped her defenses, it was like, oh, okay, I see you. So.
What kept you going when you felt that you weren't seen? Like a lot of people, that's interesting because a lot of people, when their parents, for instance, parents are a big part of our lives for a lot of years and some more than others. And when they're there and they're kind of like, I don't know, maybe not understanding us or whatever, sometimes we withdraw and follow what their path is for us instead of what our path is for ourselves. So how would you coach someone, because this is stuff I know you work with, that's maybe going through something like that where they're, they're say wanting to build a business, or they're wanting to, I don't know, do something, and their families maybe not like understanding in a way of like, yeah, go do it. They don't get it because it's not their vision. It's not their vision, mission. What are some things that could help them?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, everybody's unique. And so how that works. If I start with myself, I guess I was really stubborn. It's like my extended family wanted me to take over my dad's business when I graduated from college. I said, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
That's not it's not who I am. It's not what I want to do. I think in terms of working with clients, where I go for is what I call their essential self. And that is that part of us that knows who we are, and is willing to make the sacrifices that go with knowing who you are. Because so in my case, the sacrifice of local support, of that kind of type of family support that was available in Memphis, because I knew that it just didn't resonate with me. Not everybody has that kind of awareness and intense commitment. I think probably shaped by my dad's death in part, that it was so traumatic that it just kind of set me on that path. But when I'm working with clients, I'm going, who are you? And one of the kind of coaching gifts that I have is I actually get to see people for who they are. And when they try and kind of cover it over and make it look nice and,
I never did that.
No. I hold them accountable. I do it graciously and
very lovingly. Yes.
Yeah, but you're not going to go there with me.
He calls BS if he sees it. Put it that way.
That's right. So to really kind of hold that space for them to know the truth about themselves, because I am absolutely convinced after all these years, people do know the truth, but their ability to own that truth about themselves is where it gets compromised. And I have a lot of grace for what I call either the golden handcuffs or the bronze handcuffs. So, the golden handcuffs are the kind of the elites. The bronze handcuffs are where people, for example, get into circumstances where they take a job because their parents say it, or because it just happens. They kind of fall into it.
It pays the bills.
They're earning a salary and they're going, and they have a lifestyle, they have a family, and suddenly they realize, I can't get out of this, And I have a lot of grace for that, but I also recognize that even in those circumstances, you can stay in those circumstances and still get out of it. But the starting point is you have to own the truth of who you are. And then once people do that, they start to get creative and over time can get loose from those handcuffs.
You're listening to this and you're like, yeah, but you don't get me. I have bills to pay and all the stuff we just talked about. They're who you are, like Jean just said, and you can get out of it.
You can.
That simple. You can create your life. And let's talk about NLP. Like, I know you're an NLP coach, and people might hear this word and they're like, what exactly is that even? What got you into it? And explain a little bit about, what kind of coaching style, quote, is it? And for, who would benefit the most from it?
Oh, people who are committed. I mean, there's no question. If you're saying yes to transformation, there's no question. You'll benefit. NLP is the definition that I use and that we collectively have used is that NLP is the study of the structure of subjective experience. So that's a subjective experience thing. What's going on in the inside that generates what's going on externally through your behavior and through circumstances. What I fell in love with it because I was introduced to the first book in the series way back when, called The Structure of Magic, Volume 1. I actually looked at it and said, this is for me. This is, I mean, it's kind of like one of those moments where you go, oh, wow, I didn't know this kind of stuff even exists, you know.
The structure of magic. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
The structure of magic. They were, I mean, Bandler and Grinder, who were the developers, the original developers, were all about that kind of stuff, magic and stuff. That's, you know, it's, and the thing about it is that structure is the source of the outcomes that we generate in our life. So the structure of our identity, for example, you know, if you have a core identity of, you know, I am generosity, for example, then you produce generous outcomes. Or if you're courageous, you generate courageous behavior that produces outcomes consistent with that. So that's one thing I would say about it. The other thing I say is that NLP totally depends on who's using it. There are people who use NLP very deceptively and manipulatively and stuff, and that just, to me, that doesn't work. But it, you know, they do it, and it gives a bad name to it. On the other hand, people with values that are really humane and oriented toward well-being and stuff like that, it's incredible transformational power in it. And the other thing too, I would say, is that it's a very open-ended structure. It's like it doesn't say you have to do X in order to get Y. It says, what is X? You know, what's the structure of X? And the core question is, you know, what has to be true in order for this to be the case? And the answer to that question is structure. So that has just been, it's become my kind of mental, emotional operating system. And it just gets deeper and deeper over the years. So
that's cool. By the way, for anyone listening, like I said, it's Neuro-Linguistic Programming is what it stands for. NLP. I a lot of times can't say those words, so I just say NLP, but I got it there. So yay me. So dig into it, guys. If you haven't heard of it, check it out for sure. It's a different kind of coaching that really works on the deeper systems, I guess. Yeah. That's like an easy way.
It's very system oriented, you know, and it's very, and from my approach, is very identity based. So again, I talked about it a bit earlier, you know, it's like, we know who we are. We just have to get past the layer. So we have to delayer the self-limiting beliefs and stuff that produce the kind of the dysfunction. But we are all, you know, we have the absolute capacity to be functional and to create, you know, exponential growth, which is where that's my thing now, is exponential growth. So.
What do you think stops people from having exponential growth? I mean, themselves is a simple answer, but do you want to dig into it a little bit more?
Yeah, two things. One is this is, you know, I did a PhD in a number of years ago, and I read this article that was totally transformational for me. And basically the message of it was that transformational change has two basic requirements. One is that the individual makes the change. So in other words, we agree with whatever that change is internally and then act on it. But the other is that you have community support around you. Individual change does not sustain without external support. And I think that's it's kind of intuitive for a lot of people, but it's not so explicit. And so when it becomes explicit, what you do is you know, people talk, for example, about find your own personal board of directors, you know, kind of inner circle of people who will hold you accountable to your best self, right? When you have that, and you have the commitment to make personal transformational change, your growth trajectory just accelerates.
That's really good. Definitely good stuff to look into. What got you into Europe? So you went to Europe and you kind of brought it there in a, whatever. I mean, I'm sure it was there in some capacity, but not on a big scale.
I wasn't there at all.
Okay.
No.
What had you bring it to Europe? And you know, and as you did some of these things, did you have a lot of people asking you why you were doing it? Did you have a lot of people like questioning what you were doing?
Uh, I think so, but I tended not to listen.
Okay. Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah.
Well, the getting to Europe's a story because when I was in college, um, I was in a leadership program and was able to be an intern on a 12-week travel study tour to Europe, 12 countries in 12 weeks. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And I remember sitting in the cathedral in Cologne, Germany, and just having this epiphany. I want to live and work in Europe, and I'm what, 20 years old or something like that. And that kind of vision never left. It took me 11 years to get there, and I didn't know how I was going to get there. I didn't have a plan to get there. I just had a real passion to get there. And so kind of moving into the professional life, I was working in a communication consulting company, and my boss said, "You need some better communication skills." I deeply appreciate it. So I signed up for a transactional analysis program, and I did 3 years of that, and my supervisor worked half-time in Europe. And 2 years into the program, I didn't even realize this, but I knew that he was getting ready to go to a conference in Europe, and I was kind of very gingerly around the edges saying, "Hey, is there any way I can go?" And he said, "Yeah, you can go. Yeah, come and make a presentation, and if it passes muster, I will get you on the program, and you can speak." And so I got terrified. I totally got terrified. So we had our groups met on the weekends. So he told me that on Saturday morning, "You're going to do it tomorrow on Sunday." I went, "You got to be kidding me." I got to pull a presentation together overnight. I was up all night.
And this is before ChatGPT, guys.
Oh, God. Oh, yes. And but I pulled it together, and it was a winner of a presentation. The group that I presented to thought it was fantastic. He said, "Yeah, okay, done. You're on the program." So he did his thing and got me on the program. We went to France and I presented, and it was the first time I had ever presented to that many people. I had 150 people in the room. And it's one of these things. He walked in the door the last 10 minutes, and I went, "Oh my goodness. Oh no, he's watching." But the good news is I had already kind of gotten through, 90% of the presentation. I got a standing ovation. I was like, "You got to be kidding me. This is just," later I realized this was a God thing. I mean, this was not me. It just over and above. Anyway, out of that, there were 3 conference organizers in that presentation, and they asked me if I would come and do some training in their program. So 3 countries, Holland, Belgium, and Denmark. And so that kind of set me on the road to Europe. And then let's see what's next. I had decided I was going to move to Holland, but about that time I met Benedicta, my wife, and she lived in Copenhagen, and I'd been consulting with a Danish consulting company. And we had NLP, it still does, but NLP University had a month-long training in California, and they had come, and we were there together. And at the end of that time, they said, "Hey, how about coming and working with us?" And so it was like synchronicity was incredible, because that meant I didn't have to live in Holland. I could live in Copenhagen, and then that's where Benedicta was. And so I was working with them, met her and lived there, got married, and ended up living in Copenhagen for all that time. And there was a group of us who were interested in bringing NLP to Europe. And we founded the UK Training Center for NLP in London as the first one. And I also had this vision about developing a network of NLP institutes. So I worked with directors of 5 countries in developing the NLP network in Europe. And that was because I was in that very first cohort of people who trained with to be certified in NLP, and there were 10 of them who had developed institutes in the U.S. And it felt too crowded. I mean, and it wasn't consistent with being in Europe. And so anyway, so that was a good motivation.
That's really cool. And there you go. You got married, have kids, grandkids, all the things now. So that was a good move. It all works out how it's meant to work out. So that's really cool. I love that. Yeah, that's good. I love it. I know we could go forever, and we'll have one more thing at the end, but that you're going to bring up whatever it is that you think is really impactful. But I always have 3 final questions, and then anything that we didn't touch on that I just want you to like share from your heart, whatever you feel would be good for our listeners. But first and final question is, if someone is looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you could say that could help them find it?
I would say your purpose exists within your embodied knowing, and all you have to do is ask. Well,
second question, what's a favorite quote and why?
Well, I was not prepared for that one, but what just popped in my head was the Nike phrase, "Just do it."
Yeah, that's why I say a favorite quote. It's not your necessarily all times. I love that. And third and final question is, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
I mean, the word that came to mind was faithful.
That's a good one. All right, you're running into someone in a coffee shop and they've listened to what we went through, but what's something we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners?
Yeah, I would say that. So can I tell a short story?
Yeah, take as long as you want.
So I had this question. The answer is the answer to this question. I had this question that I kind of mused on, and I mentioned that my mother in her last 7 years and I had this incredible relationship. And so I was able to ask her the question. Now, she had begun to decline mentally and physically for sure. But spiritually, I would say she was kind of rising up. She was amazing. And the question was, when do you become an adult? And she looked at me with this kind of intense gaze and said, when do you become an adult? And she said it in such a way that I had to answer it. And it had lots of ramifications, because for one thing, it anchored in me this understanding that we collectively, myself, but all of us, we know things that we don't let ourselves know. And we just, I call it embodied knowing. It's there, it's just not conscious mind. So I kind of sat there for, I don't know how long, but for time. And I realized that I did know the answer. And the answer is, when we get the revelation that everything we think, everything we say, everything we do is our choice. And whether it's conscious or unconscious, it's our choice. So that has to do with our personal agency and responsibility. And I think that once people get past the idea of that and actually embody it as a way of living, it transforms everything. I mean, it gives them agency. You talked about purpose. It fulfills purpose. It's incredible. It's been an incredible gift to me because, for example, in relationship, when it's the whole idea that somebody else cannot make me feel. So I'm in a relationship with Benedicta, and she says something, and I go, "Oh gosh," I start to wind myself up. I go, "No, wait a second. My response. I'm responsible for that. I'm choosing, and I could choose something else." And as a consequence of kind of living that principle out, I've been able to increase the speed at which I move from pointing to somebody else as the cause and returning to myself as the source of that response. And it just makes life much more peaceful, more easy, because it gives me, I have agency to deal with it when I own it as my choice, because I can make a different choice, right? And if I'm pointing to an external cause and I don't have control over that, then it's like, oh, then I become the victim, and that doesn't work.
You're listening to this, you're like, if they like me, I'm like, oh yeah, I just did that yesterday. Got to work on that one. That is gold right there. You decide how you feel. No one else can decide how you feel.
That's right.
It's up to you. And when you can control that, then you can control your life. That's really cool. Guys, if you are looking for a coach or anything like that, definitely reach out. We'll have Gene's information in the show notes. Excited for you guys to learn more about what he does. This guy, like I said, is incredible. If we can go out there, if we can help one person or one starfish at a time together, we can help change the world. Thanks for being on, Gene.
Yeah, it's fantastic being here. Thank you.